All right, today we're diving into something pretty radical. It's a whole new way of thinking about schizophrenia, one that pushes its origins, well, way, way earlier than most of us probably ever thought.
I mean, for decades, right, we've been looking for answers in adult brain chemistry and genetics. But what if we've been looking in the right neighborhood, just at the wrong time of day? That's the question that's completely shaking up our understanding of this disorder. So, let's walk through the evidence for this new origin story. We're going to trace the roots of schizophrenia all the way back to the very first moments of human development.
And this quote really sets the stage for us. See, it's not just about genes, and it's not just about the environment. It's about this incredibly complex dance between the two, a dance that starts long, long before any symptoms ever show up. So, how do you even begin to understand a dance that complex? Well, scientists have come up with a new framework for it. It's called the lifetime trajectory model. And this model, it completely reframes the whole thing. Instead of thinking of schizophrenia as something that just suddenly breaks in a person's 20s, it helps us see it as the result of a long, cascading process. It's an accumulation of vulnerabilities and hits, and it starts right from conception. So this new model forces us to ask a really fundamental question. Is the brain developing normally and then something comes along and derails it? Or was there a disruption to the brain's construction plan from the very beginning? And you know what? A huge, growing mountain of research now points squarely at that second option. It really looks like the blueprint for the brain itself is altered very, very early on.
Okay, so how on earth did scientists figure this out? Well, it's kind of like a detective story, really. They had to follow this trail of clues, these subtle patterns they found in massive amounts of population data, and every single clue pointed back to the same place, the prenatal environment. And the first big clue? It came from a really unexpected source, the flu. Yeah, you heard that right. Epidemiologists started noticing something fascinating. Whenever there was a major flu epidemic, there was this small but totally significant uptick in schizophrenia diagnoses among the kids who were in the womb during that outbreak. And get this, it wasn't the virus itself. It seems to be the mother's immune response that's the critical factor.
All right, so the next clue on the trail has to do with what a mother eats, or maybe more importantly, what she can't get. You see, tragic historical events like the Dutch famine during World War II gave researchers a kind of natural experiment. And what they found was that children of mothers who were starved during pregnancy had a higher risk of developing schizophrenia later on. This also helps explain a puzzle that's been around for a long time. Why do we see more people with schizophrenia born in the late winter and early spring? Well, that's a time that's historically been linked to less fresh food and, less sunlight for vitamin D. Okay, so our third and final set of clues. This one comes from the process of birth itself. Now, this is a really broad category. It covers everything from, say, preeclampsia to complications during delivery that might reduce the oxygen getting to the baby's brain. And look, no single one of these things is a direct cause, but it's the overall pattern of stress on the system that seems to add to the risk. Okay, so let's recap. We've got our clues: maternal infection, nutrition, and complications during birth. But how do they all connect? How do these things actually change a developing brain?
It really does seem like a huge leap, doesn't it? You've got a fever during pregnancy on one end, and then a complex psychological condition 20 years later. How does that work? Well, the answer seems to be in the common biological pathways that all these different events trigger. So if you look at this, you can see how all those different things we talked about, infection, stress, not enough nutrition, they don't cause the disorder directly. Instead, they all seem to funnel down and converge on just a few key biological pathways. And if you look closely, you'll notice that a lot of these really diverse risk factors can lead to two big problems for the developing fetus: hypoxia, which is just a lack of oxygen, and poor overall growth. And these kinds of insults can cause subtle but permanent changes to the brain's structure, to its chemical signaling system, and even to its ability to process information way down the line. But here's the really crucial part. These environmental factors aren't just acting in a vacuum. No, they're interacting with a brain that already has a very particular genetic makeup, its own specific level of vulnerability or resilience. So when we put all these pieces of the puzzle together, the picture that emerges is so much more nuanced than those simple debates we used to have. The whole perspective has shifted. We've gone from searching for that one single schizophrenia gene to understanding it's a polygenic disorder, where lots of genes each add a tiny bit to the overall risk. We've gone from focusing only on the adult brain to looking at its deep, deep developmental roots. And most importantly, we've finally moved beyond nature versus nurture. We now realize it has always been nature and nurture. A really great way to think about all this is the analogy of a seed and soil. Think of your genes as the seed. They hold all the potential. But the prenatal environment, that's the soil. And the quality of that soil, the nutrients, the water, the lack of toxins, is absolutely critical for deciding how or even if that genetic potential gets expressed. So why does any of this matter? Well, it's huge. Because if the story really starts before birth, then you know what? Prevention can too. This understanding opens up completely new avenues for public health. We can start focusing on things like better prenatal care, nutrition, and managing maternal health, all to give every single brain the best possible start in life. It's a really profound shift in perspective, isn't it? And it leaves us with a question that's both hopeful and incredibly challenging. If the story is rewritten before birth, can we create a better first chapter for future generations? By understanding these deep origins, we might just have a chance to write a much healthier future.